So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for the Masterclass Emerging Technologies in Business Transformation Challenges and Hidden Impact by the University of Bath. This is Isanka Uja, I'm Client Engagement Specialist at StudyIn, and I will be moderating today's session. At StudyIn, we work closely with the leading global universities, including the University of Bath to help students gain clarity about international study opportunities and make informed academic and career decisions. Today's masterclass is for students who want to understand how emerging technologies are changing the way of business and compete. We will explore how organizations use digital tools to stay competitive and the challenges they may face during digital transformation. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Mariam. She is the Assistant Professor in Supply Chain and Operations Management at the University of Bath School of Management. She also serves as a Director of Studies for the Master's Operations, Logistics, and Supply Chain Management program. Dr. Mariam is an EPIC certified supply chain professional with over 10 years of experience in supply chain and operations management. She holds both a master's and PhD from the University of Bath. Before we begin, a quick note for everyone. The Q&A option is available at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to submit your questions during the session, and we will combine the questions and address them at the end of the session. So now, without any further delay, I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Mariam. Over to you. All the best for the session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ishank. Hello, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. As Ishank mentioned, my name is Miriam, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Bath School of Management. And it's my pleasure to give this masterclass today about emerging technologies in businesses. Before diving into what we're going to be covering today, I'd like to start with a very simple question. How many of you have used technology in the last hour? And I would say probably all of you, isn't it? So you have probably made an online purchase, you have used your phone to pay at a shop, you've used internet and your connection and your computer to connect to this master class. So really technology has become part of your life. Like you can't imagine your life now without technology. So when we take that to a different level, which is the company level, think about how this technology, if technology is changing your life this way, how is technology changing businesses? And what do businesses need to do to offer you that service and those products that allow you to do all of what you do with technology today? And this is what I want you to think of like now. So the extent to which companies are using technology to offer you products and services that you are using. So technology now is no longer supporting businesses, but it has become like part of how companies compete, part of how companies make decisions, and even how society functions. So today I'll be exploring four elements: how technologies have evolved, the technologies that are powering business functions. And here, obviously, there are so many technologies and we have so many business functions. We have finance, HR, marketing, sales, purchasing. I won't be able to cover everything in 15 minutes. So what I try to do is to cover a few technologies and how they're used in some of the functions. Then I'll move on to the challenges. So why or what are the challenges that companies face when they want to implement technology? And then finally, what we tend to think is that what technology is a good thing, but if you dive deeper into what technology is and how it works, there is like something behind the scene that's going on that has a real impact on the environment, society, ethics, etc. So this is how I'm going to conclude my presentation today. So if we look at here how technology has evolved, the first major shift has been in the 1700s. Obviously, you won't know this probably unless if you have seen it in a history class. But because you were not there, I was not there. So we don't know what has happened at the time. But what we know is that during that period and during the Industrial Revolution, many things has moved from agriculture to industry. And this shift has been possible with the emergence of factories, engines, railways, electricity, communication systems. And this is where actually we started seeing a takeoff of scale and efficiency. Then after that, we moved to the information era, and this is like the digital era where we started seeing computers, internet from after the Second World War. So after that, with the emergence of the Japanese Toyota system, the American Ford system, we wanted something, demand has increased for products that we wanted a technology that would allow this scale and efficiency. So here, like computers have emerged, and this is what allowed us to have cross countries collaboration between suppliers and buyers. So it transformed actually how information flows, improving coordination and efficiency. Then maybe you're familiar with what happened at the end of this era, but after that, I'm pretty sure you all were there. It's the intelligence era or after 2010. So what happened in the intelligence era is that those tools that were created, they were not only systems to process information, but as we've seen recently, they started making decisions. So there is a shift in the human computer collaboration and how we collaborate with those systems and who makes decisions. So the key message here is that there has been an evolution, there have been some changes, and each wave has introduced new tools that redefined how businesses operate. And then one example, one very simple example, if you wanted to buy a flat or rent a flat maybe 15 years ago, what you had to do, and the only option that you had, is either to walk there and then check the flat or to see images or a video. Now, what we have with virtual reality as a technology, we have people, let's say in India, buying, or like people in the UK buying flats in India through virtual reality. So they can see, they can walk through the space, they can see how it feels without even being there. So look at the change and look at the shift. So that's how technology has evolved. But technology has moved from a support function to a core strategy. Now we compete on technology. That's your competitive advantage. So, what I want you to do now is to grab your phones, scan the barcode that you see on the screen, and then answer the following question. All right, so we've got like here a few responses. Some others are still responding. Good, and the majority got it right. So the amount of emails that are sent every day is more than 300 billion emails. So this is the scale of digital communication today. And think of it as data. So every email that you send or that you exchange is data that is generated, stored, analyzed. And this is where companies operate in a massive and continuous data flow. So moving on to the next question. How many packages does Amazon ship daily? Good. So very good. Like this is the amount of packages that Amazon ships daily, but what does this tell us? I mean, it's impressive, 20 plus million Amazon packages. But what does this tell us? This is not just logistics. I mean, logistics without technology wouldn't be able to send that number of packages. So it's the scale, it's the technology that allows this scale to be possible and manageable. Moving on to the next question. It's loading. How many burgers does McDonald's sell per second? And of course, when we say sell, we say there is a production behind that. There is a lot of logistics behind that to get things on time to the branches, etc. So the amount of burgers that are sold gives you an idea about the what's happening behind the scene. So looking at the answers here, the right answer is 75 burgers per second. Time it by the number of hours, and that's massive. So this is standardization at scale. Their processes are very well optimized that production becomes predictable and repeatable. And this is where operations and technology come together. Moving on to my fourth question. How long does it take to manufacture a modern Toyota car in a highly automated factory? And if you've been to a factory before, you would know the answer. I think we've got half the answers here, so we could just look at the right answer. So it's 20 to 30 hours. Most of you did not expect that, but that's how long it takes now. And this is only possible with robotics, data, and process innovation. So what used to take days before now takes 20 to 30 hours. And then my final question is, in a modern commercial flight, pilots manually control the aircraft for roughly how much of total flight time? Okay, got a few answers here. And it's 5%. And 14 people got it right. So this is not to scare you actually about flying, but it's just to say that pilots oversee systems more than they manually operate them. And the idea here is that even in highly scaled professions, automation and technology still play a major role. So this really shows you how technology is not replacing humans, but changing their roles. So these were the five questions just to give you a taste about the impact of technology in things that you experience daily, but you don't really think about the sheer of technology and the impact of technology in those simple tasks. So now let's look at technologies that are powering modern organizations. And if you look at this graph on the right-hand side of my screen, you could see that by 2028, the global spending on digital transformation will approach $4 trillion dollars. And this staggering scale of investment isn't just about technology, but it's about redefining the foundations of growth, of competition between companies, but also of society and economic power in this 21st century. So let's zoom in on the technologies that companies are investing in. As I mentioned previously, this is just a brief overview that we're covering in this hour and not everything. So we have artificial intelligence and data analytics. We have robotics and automation. We have cloud computing. And I'm going to explain each in the following slides. We have Internet of Things and other technologies that are emerging at the moment, digital twins, quantum computing, edge computing. This is not covered today. So starting with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is now at the center of digital transformation. It is transforming our lives, it is transforming education, it is transforming all other industries. And just to give you some numbers here, the global investment in AI platforms is 226 billion, and there are more than 200,000 companies, of which 4% are in India. And if you think 4% is a very small number, if I convert it into companies, that's about 8,000 plus companies in India, which makes it a really strong player in this economy alongside the US, China, and the UK. So the chart here, applying artificial intelligence in business has evolved. Obviously, at the beginning, many companies, as you could see here, they were in the early stage. So if you look at 2023, about 75% of companies, they were just experimenting, testing how artificial intelligence would be implemented in their processes. A year after that, this has dropped to 25%. And this gives a clear message here, which is like companies now are not competing in an environment that's very relaxed, but there is a lot of pressure. Even like the scale of change is very rapid, you know? So, and this has gone down to approximately 5% or even like lower than that in 2025. So we could see that the large majority of companies are now within the implementation of AI. So they've implemented AI in different processes. And then even the proportion of companies that are implementing it at scale has increased to about 30%. So the idea here is that companies over the years are moving from experimentation to core operation. So you can't imagine a business without the use of AI. So it's part of their DNA and of how they work. Okay, now let's move on to robotics and automation. So here in the screen, I put together like different industries where robots are used. So you could see here the automotive industry, the medical field, the warehousing, hospitality, restaurants, construction, agriculture. So that by itself, just looking at this picture, you know the extent to which robots are now part of industries. So the investment is about 17 billion US dollars at the moment, and there are different types of robots. I don't want to go into the technical stuff about robots, but you could see them here. We have robots, industrial robots. We have cobots that work with a human. We have automatic mobile robots or autonomous mobile robots, and then we have humanoids. Now, why are robots important? Simple, because they can do repetitive tasks. Okay, so that people or workers can focus on something that would create value. So instead of doing repetitive tasks, they could do material handling, welding, assembly, all the like packaging job. They could carry hazardous materials. They could operate in very dangerous environment like mining sites, for instance. Okay, let me just, I don't know why this message keeps occurring on my screen. So they are an alternative to several of the issues that companies face. And one of the major issues that companies are facing at the moment, especially in developed countries where population is aging, is the workforce availability. So robots, they replace human in those environment, like in those societies, because there is nobody to work. So if there are no robots to do the work, maybe companies would have to shift some of their processes, etc. Cloud computing, and I'm sure all of you, you know what cloud is. And maybe 100% of the people here in this session, they use cloud. So iCloud that you use for your phones is the equivalent of cloud computing for companies. So you don't store everything on your device, you access it when you need it. You pay as you go, so it's something that companies use on a pay as you go. It's not they remove everything from the service, so they don't have to store anything on their data centers, so everything is on the cloud. Big companies are Amazon, Microsoft, and Alphabet. So these are the companies that account for more than 60% of the market of cloud computing. And the importance of cloud, especially now, because it's very flexible, and that's the key characteristic of cloud computing. Why it is important? Because there are so many changes in the environment, and we see it every day with wars, geopolitical tensions, environmental challenges, etc. Companies sometimes need to scale up or scale down. So the one way of doing this without incurring any upfront investment or without incurring any losses in case of scaling down is to have in the cloud. So think of it as you having iCloud. You could pay monthly to store your photos. One day you decide, no, I don't like it. I want to print out my photos. So I need to delete all the data that I have. You just delete it, you cancel the subscription, and that's it, you're done. It could be that you don't have any iCloud subscription, and it happened to me personally. So I was on a trip and I didn't have the higher iCloud subscription. And then I couldn't take pictures, and it was so annoying because every time I wanted to take a picture, it asked me to delete some because the storage is full. So what I did is that quickly I subscribed to a higher capacity, and then I was free. So once I moved my picture to another platform, That's it. I canceled my subscription. So this flexibility, this agility, what makes the cloud computing a really important and one of the most impactful technologies now. So it allows faster innovation, collaboration by providing really reliable global access to data and applications from everywhere. Especially that companies, like many companies now, are multinational, so they have subsidiaries all around the globe. So this gives this elasticity and agility benefits. Moving on to Internet of Things. That's another thing that you've probably using without realizing what it is. And if we had like an option to see all faces, or if I was in a physical classroom, I would have asked you to raise your hands about how many of you are using Internet of Things. And usually you get only a small number of students. But once and say, do you use a smartwatch? Everybody's like, yes. And I'm like, okay, this is Internet of Things. So you're using it without even realizing it. So what is it really, Internet of Things? It's just a network of devices that are connected to the internet. Okay, so your Apple Watch that tracks your steps, your heart rate, or now with the advances in Internet of Things, you could lock your car or unlock it by distance. Like you don't have to use the remote to unlock it. You could just unlock it from your app. You could switch the AC or the heating on and off without before getting to your house. So this is like all devices connected. And because of all of this, there are more than 40 billion devices connected. This is way more than the number of people that are in the planet. So, so the market value is about 369 billion according to Statista. And then how they're used, just trying to remove this message that keeps popping. So on a larger scale, the same idea applies to smart homes, smart cities, or industrial Internet of Things. So what we have here is smart cities, like, or smart home, where everything is automated in your daily life. The fridge, the freezer, the TV, you could control everything in your house without being in the house. We've got smart cities to optimize how the entire system in the city runs. And of course, we have industrial IoT, where we connect machines to make businesses faster and more efficient. And there are many companies using Internet of Things. For example, DHL, they use it in their warehouses to connect everything so that they could have what we call heat maps. And those heat maps, they show you where you have issues in the warehouse. So if there is, for example, an employee going to somewhere that's very critical, or where there could be an accident, it flags up before even the employee gets there. If there is a problem with it, with maintenance, so it would flags up before even the machine breakdown. So it moves you from being reactive to being proactive, and that's really really critical in businesses. So um now let's move on to how these technologies, so we talked about four technologies: artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics, and automation, and Internet of Things. So let's see how these are specifically used in specific functions within the company. Let's start by marketing. Many of you here would have a marketing major probably. And how has marketing changed with technology? So the function is still the same. They have the same task, they're doing the same job. But the nature of what they're doing has changed. So reaching out to customers have changed. Moving from mass broadcasting, so previously, we used to be watching TV and we have a lot of ads, like it's a mass broadcast to everybody, to the million of people who are watching something on the TV, to now having specific and personalized recommendations. So when you open your Netflix, like put here the example of Netflix, when you open your Netflix and you have based on what you've watched, blah, 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 blah. And you have some recommendations. So this is AI in action. But there is like, and there is problem with that. So the impact is huge, and it's estimated that 80% of people who watch based on recommendations. But also a recent study by the consulting firm McKinsey has showed that 35% of people, they do experience what we call algorithmic fatigue. So basically when Netflix keeps recommending things that you hate, and this happens because of issues with the algorithms. They are not 100%, how do I say it, like there is like some bias in how they work. So there is some algorithmic bias in how those AI algorithm work. If we move on to operations, so as I said, technology has allowed moving from being reactive to real time. So Amazon, they use robots for warehouse operations, and it's massive. Like you could walk into a warehouse and not see any single person there. So it's all robots. From robots doing the packaging, from robots doing the picking. And here is a quick video that we can watch actually now to show you how robots are used in Amazon warehouses. You can see here different functions. So next time you click on purchase now from an online retailer, you could imagine what happens behind the scenes when you press the buy now button. Now moving on to the next function, which is HR. And the reason why I chose HR is that because you're going to be applying for jobs and you want to know how companies are using technology for employee screening or for candidate screening. So HR has moved really from being an administrative task, payroll, paperwork, basic hiring, to being very strategic and data driven. So companies now, they use AI to screen CVs. So instead of having a person screening the CV, what we do, we train the algorithm, we put all what we need, and then it just gets screened. So if you don't have the keywords that are needed on your CV, you they put you aside because you don't fit, and that's AI that's doing that. You also have AI for interviewing. So basically, the first screening or the first interview is done by an AI, not a real person. And one example is Mastercard, so the banking company that partnered with Phenom to unify their career site. So basically, their campaigns, their analytics, their automated interview scheduling, everything is now is in a single journey, so you have one platform for everything. So they achieved very impressive numbers. So they could 88% of interviews are booked within 24 hours. So how you have everything automated, you don't need to send multiple emails back and forth, etc. All the assessment centers or the tests are now done remotely, virtually using AI. So we've looked at different examples. You've watched the video, you've seen how technology is used, but what is the actual impact of these technologies on companies. So if you look at the academic literature, and I do some research on digital supply chain, so I mostly look at operations and supply chain rather than HR or marketing. And if you look at the research, you'll find that there is a lot of positivity in there. So there is a lot of positive impact of this technology on performance. But if we look at industry report from consulting firm, and this is one example that I put here, but I've noticed that there is consistency across all report, and that's why I did not put so many numbers here, not to confuse you. So 70% of digital transformations, they fall short of their objective. So what does this tell us? Technology is there, but technology is not the only thing that's needed. So there are other things that are needed to make technology or technological transformation work. And just to give you an idea about the size of this failure, it could be like million of dollars or million of euros. A recent example is the company Biomet with Deloitte. So they partnered with Deloitte to roll out an SAP solution, and it just did not work. So it was not a technological glitch only, but it stopped them from shipping their product. And the impact of that failure amounted to about 2 billion of their value as a company. So what's going wrong here? It's not technology, as I said. What could be wrong here is different elements. And those different elements, they give you the idea of like every digital transformation is not a technology project only. So companies or manager, they tend to think if I acquire technology, I would solve the problems that I have and I would achieve better outcomes. So this mentality as technology is the silver bullet does not work. Technology cannot fix everything alone. So we have to think about technology as a business transformation. And when I say business transformation, when you have new technology, and I break it down here, we have to think about the technology itself. We have to think about the organization where this technology is nested, if I could call it this way. And then we have the environment where the company operates. So if we look at technology here, so what's the problem with technology? Technology, what happens is most of the time, what happens is that you roll out this technology on some legacy systems. So you have an old system and you want to improve it, and you bring a new technology and you try to implement it. So what happens here is that you create more complexity instead of value. And a recent example would be Lidl in Germany, which is a German outlet, like supermarket. And what happened is that they failed about like 500 million SAP project because they could not integrate it properly. Another example, like there are so many examples. Another examples in North America would be Target. If you know, Target is a American retailer. They tried to expand into Canada. They thought that it would be straightforward, like we just move in up north a bit, but it was not the case. And the reason why, because they had a lot of issues with their inventory management, their stock, and the root cause of those issues, operational issues, was data and data integrity. So they were not able to integrate their data with the systems that they had in place already. The other issue, as I said, with the company, so the technology, then we have the company. With the company, if you bring something new, the first thing that you have or that you could think about is resistance. Okay, just take a very simple example here. Take a new technology to your grandma and say, "Oh, grandma, I brought you a new technology that would help you do this." And I would be 100% sure that she would say, "No, I'm okay with doing it. I'm doing it. It's working for me. I don't want to change it." And this is what really happens sometimes in companies, is that technology works, but people do not. So they don't really like it. And Examples could be General Electrics, where they had a failure of the system because people did not want to use it. So there is a lot of capability gap. There is a lot of resistance to change. There is a lot of poor leadership alignment and silo teams that limits adoption of technology. So imagine you bring a new technology, but you don't have the support of the top management. So it's like think of it as trying to change a wheel of a car while it's moving. It's not possible. And you have siloed teams. So what happens sometimes in company is that, say for instance, the production team, they saw a new opportunity in bringing a technology, but then the other teams, as in sales, marketing, purchasing, they're all connected, you know? So one technology in one area would have an impact on the other area, and there should be collaboration. They don't want to collaborate. There is a lot of tension between functions within a company because each function has its own objectives to achieve. And moving on finally to the final challenge is the environment. So the external environment, which is sometimes like, for instance, if we take Uber in so many countries, the technology is the same, the outcome was not the same because of the law, the regulations, market uncertainty, digital divide. Like if you go to countries in the south, connectivity issues, internet issues, technological platform issues. So there is a lot of from the environment that works against you. So it doesn't come from inside the company, but it comes from the external environment. So now I'll move on to the paradoxes that I talked about at the beginning, and that's the fourth and final part of my presentation, the environmental impact. So technology does not really solve problems in your life. It doesn't make traveling easier or payment easier, but it also creates other issues. And the issues, they come about from having digital data centers, or what we call power-hungry digital data centers. And I put here some examples, just so you'll be reading my screen just to have an idea. So those data centers are the backbone of digital economy. You know, every AI query, every video you stream, every cloud service runs through those data centers, and those data centers obviously they require lots of power, lots of energy, a lot of water to for cooling systems to prevent overheating. And to put this into perspective, as I put here, training one model like AI, artificial intelligence model, would amount to something similar to 125 trips from New York to Beijing. That's the carbon footprint. And next time you think about writing a prompt to ChatGPT, if that's the one that you use for having an image about something, like what I did here to get this image that I have on the screen, that was 50% of a smartphone charge. That's massive. How many people are on Earth? How many people are using? I think we're 17% in the entire world that use artificial intelligence based on statistics. So you know the environmental impact. And if we look at the amount of water that's needed for cooling, by 2027, it would be more than 50% of the UK's whole country water use. All right. And there is a lot of things going on now with the environmental impact, especially in the US. Lots of NGOs targeting Microsoft or Google for their data center impact. Recently, Microsoft has stopped the building of a new data center, mega data center, because of this. So they're trying to use this technology. So it's actually like the chicken and egg. So you use technology to improve something, it has a negative impact, then you use again technology to work on this negative impact. So basically now they're using renewable energy, they're using innovation, they're trying to innovate to circumvent those issues. Moving on to the ethical impact, and that's something that you come across every time you create a new account in a social media. You have a list of terms and conditions, and this is related to data privacy and confidentiality. So, in companies using technology in HR and different functions, the ethical risks scale up with this. And we've seen lots of cyber threats and cybersecurity investment and stories in the news recently. Plaguing like WhatsApp, for example, with cybersecurity threats. The other issue with technology is bias and discrimination. So now, if an algorithm is making the decision, who's accountable? So there is a lot of issues about accountability and integrating AI in businesses or in very critical industries like medical services, like services. If you have an AI that denies a patient treatment, so say an AI would do the first screening, if it denies a patient treatment, who's responsible? Is it the doctor? Is it the hospital? Is it the company that trained the algorithm, the developer? Who is responsible? So here we need to take a responsible innovation lens to the technology that is created. And where this becomes critical is these are not like isolated issues, but they shape access to job, to finance, to healthcare, to entire life outcomes. And this shows like a systemic impact. So the key idea here is the ethical risk, it scales up with adoption. So the more technology we have, the more ethical risk we would have. And finally, the social impact. So technology does not just affect businesses, but it affects and reshapes society. It creates opportunities, but also inequality. So now companies who do not have the capabilities are not really able to use these tools. So who can actually use these tools to create value? Think of it this way. You have Microsoft, you have Google, you have these mega companies, but also you have SMEs in a small town in India. So think about this agentic inequality and this digital divide. Not just who has technology, but to be competitive, you have to know to act with it. So the matter is not only having access to technology, but also the capabilities to use it. The other element is algorithmic management, and this is where companies they use algorithm to manage employees. So think of the workers that work in a warehouse. They are not evaluated, but the manager, but there is an algorithm that evaluate them. So basically, the software tracks, evaluate, and directs workers in real time and directs workers in real time. They optimize their those algorithm they could optimize their production, but there is a lot of social and mental health well-being issues. So there is stress, higher rates of physical and mental strain. And what happens here is that when technology places like lots of pressure on employees, what they try to do is just to work around it. For example, Uber drivers, and there is this issue with algorithmic management on Uber drivers. So what they do is that they work around the algorithms by rejecting certain trips or coordinated behavior between the driver to improve earnings. And then finally, we have the future of work, which is another problem with technology. So looking ahead, I mean, the projections are quite, I would say, quite positive because the net gains in terms of job is still very high. So with all the changes that we have in the environment, technological, climatic, etc., we have approximately 92 million of jobs that will be displaced. But beside that, we have about 170 millions of new jobs that would be created. So if you subtract 92 from 170, you would get a net gain of 78 million jobs. So the idea here is not that transformation, digital transformation would kill job, but it would reconfigure the skills that are needed for doing jobs properly. So you cannot really transition, but you must reskill and adapt. So the big question is, who actually benefits from technological advances. So let me briefly summarize the key takeaways that I have here. Firstly, while technology is widespread, organizations do not use it equally, so they struggle to use it effectively. Second, transformation is accelerating rapidly, but human and organizations sometimes they do lag behind. Third, innovation really scales very efficiently, but so do the risk, as I mentioned, the ethical risk. And then finally, the risk is not job loss, but skill obsolescence. Okay, the challenge is not simply losing jobs, but ensuring that individuals have the capabilities that are required. And this brings me to the real question here that I want to use to conclude my presentation today. If technology would change business, the question is whether you'll be ready when it does. So, do you think your current skill set is safe for the next 5 years? Because the difference between being disrupted and leading disruption is actually education, capability, and the choices that you make next. So, if any questions about the programs that we have at the School of Management, I put here the email of our team to whom you could reach out and I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for the wonderful and the insightful session. Let's take up the questions. Uh, what are the skills we can work on right now if after graduation we need to work in tech companies in UK and US?
Okay, so if you ask me about the skills that you have to work on, in maybe a year or two, the first thing is your digital literacy because there would be engineers if you are doing management, for example, there would be engineers that would provide the technology. There would be engineers who can train you in the technology. But if you don't have the soft skills and leadership skills to manage the technology, to manage the team, to collaborate with different departments within the company, you're gone. So I would say the first thing is digital literacy to understand, or more specifically, AI literacy, especially that it's evolving rapidly. So you have to know what's going on. You need to understand how an algorithm works, but you don't need to develop it because that's not your job. But also you need to know how you can manage a team when the algorithm make wrong decisions. You're not going to go to your team and blame people. So you need to have those leadership skills to make sure you behave properly within your team.
Uh, do students need a strong technical background, or can business students without coding experience still succeed in this field?
I would say that you, as I said, like now, you just need some AI or digital literacy to be able to understand how things work, to be able to discuss with people who provide you with the technology. But then the business and management skills that you acquire throughout your studies would allow you to fit in even in big companies. And I've had like, we have so many companies that we work with. And when you ask them about what kind of skills are you looking for, believe it or not, they talk about digital literacy, but they say, well, we want people who can communicate well. We want people who know how to manage conflict. We want people who have some emotional intelligence skills. We have people who can lead teams. We have people who can work in cross-functional teams. So these are the soft skills that you need to learn besides knowing about technology and wherever area you're going to end up with marketing, supply chain, accounting and finance, etc. So you've got some technical skills related to the area where you want to study. You have digital skills that are necessary and you have soft skills. So these are three components that you need to have.
What changes are required in teaching business studies to meet the demands of rapid technological growth?
Sorry, say it again. You broke
What
up.
change what changes are required in teaching business studies to meet the demands of rapid technological growth?
So if I understood this question properly, is that the changes in teaching? to meet the
Yes.
requirement. Okay, so I would say that changes in teaching, and we're witnessing this. We have so many changes going on, and the first thing that we do is to have some project-based learning because now the challenge is that you have access to lots of information. So what we do as professors or as school or as university is that we focus on project-based learning, is that you work on real projects and that enables you to be immersed in what happens in practice. The other strategy is having a lot of like collaboration with companies. And when I say collaboration, it could range from having guest speakers to having actually an entire unit designed with a company. So these are two elements that are very important. And the third element is what we try to do is to integrate technology in our teaching. So if we talk about artificial intelligence, if you use artificial intelligence in education, you would get the logic and the reasoning that you could apply in any other context. So, as a professor, what I do, for example, is that I integrate AI to the limit that's allowed by the university, of course, in my teaching. So, I give students AI prompts that they could use. I ask them to comment. I ask them to be the judge of the results that they get from AI because this is what you need when you're going to work in a company. AI can give you good elements, but also it can give you rubbish insights. So you need to have this ability to assess the outputs of AI. And this is what we try to teach our students by doing several of those exercises in the classroom. I think that's how education is changing and teaching is changing.
Could you please tell which vertical of logistics still require a lot of technological improvement?
Which part of
Which
logistics?
vertical of logistics? Which vertical of logistics still requires a lot of technological improvement?
So if we look at logistics and the technological improvement, I would say looking at the market at the moment, the function is transportation. So transportation still requires lots of improvement because there is a lot of driver shortages, especially if I speak about the UK. There is a lot of driver shortages. So there is some technology going on, as in a track platooning, where you have one track guiding several other driverless tracks, but it's not there yet because there is a lot of regulation. The roads and the infrastructure are not adapted to this technology. So you see that in the warehouse, which is a component of logistics, there is a lot of technological advances, but when you go in the road, you don't really see driverless truck yet. You don't really see technology in the road. You have simple technologies that is in trucks that you can track the speed, the number of hours that have been worked. So you have GPS, for example, but not to that level of having complete truck with no driver. We have the other function of logistics, which is last mile delivery. And this is where we have lots of technologies involved. For example, having drones delivering packages or having robots delivering packages. Although there has been lots of progress in this area, but the cost related to it is still massive. Would you pay $70 or more to get delivered by a drone in a few minutes? Question mark, it depends. So the cost associated with that is still high. It's been decreasing because the technology has been scaling drones, but it's still high that customers cannot really afford it. So there is a lot to do in this last mile delivery, getting the package from the last point of the delivery to the customer.
In what ways can automation create new jobs rather than eliminate them?
So as I said, automation, it does eliminate repetitive jobs. But when you have, and it creates new jobs because why? Because when you have robots working in a warehouse, who actually guides the robots? So you need people to guide the robots, to have the coding, etc., or you need other technology that would help you do this. But what happens when something breaks down? You need to have a supervisor who would solve the issue. So there is a lot about technology going on, but still the human is needed. And I gave you the example of pilots. So although they don't do like they just monitor for 95% of the flight, but it is needed. Human is needed. And an example of this would be if you remember the incident of Boeing 737-800 where they Max, so they plugged in a new software in the airplane, and then the pilots did not have a hand on the software, and what happens, two incidents that cost the lives of so many people. So even though you have technology, you still need people to monitor this technology and to work on this technology in case something goes wrong because of the biases, because of the discrimination. So there is a lot of issues with technology that we cannot really get rid of humans.
Okay. So one last question. Will there be any replacement to AI in business functions that can achieve efficiency with less impact on social environment and ethical concerns?
That's that's a very big question for me to
The
ask.
replacement to AI in business functions. Yeah.
So if we're talking about would there be a replacement to AI in business functions to reduce the impact? This is not a scientific answer, but this is how I see things. So, so I would say if companies are innovating in green technology, and when I say green, there is a lot about how they do the cooling. There is a lot about renewable energy that they use. There is a lot about grids and how they use them, using alternative fuel. So if they do this, yes, I would see maybe a technology that has a lesser impact, but, but, and there is a but here, because the AI that we have at the moment is just weak AI. So that's the lowest or the weakest level of artificial intelligence. It is just AI like ChatGPT that deals with one task. Oh, do this, paraphrase, create image, etc. But we're moving into strong AI or agentic AI that would be making decisions. So maybe once we get to that, I don't know in how many years or maybe how many months, because that's evolving rapidly, maybe we will need something else. But currently, what they're doing is that big companies, are trying to be socially responsible, improving communities to have access to more of this. And a recent article that I've read is that, for example, Microsoft are considering moving some of their data centers to the south so that they create communities there and allow people to work on those data centers, but also to move on a bit of the impact, obviously. Uh, so it's very unknown and uncertain.
So that's it. Thank you so much, Dr. Mariam, for the
You're
wonderful and the
welcome.
insightful session. Received a lot of questions and you answered them very properly, very practically. I hopeful I hope the session went well. So thank you so
Yep.
much, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Mariam,
Thank
for
you.
joining the session. And thank you so much to all the attendees. Wishing you a restful day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Same to you. Bye bye.